I just can't imagine going through all of this and welcoming a child for the first time. Was there a moment when you found out you were pregnant where you thought this is bad timing? Or at that point, had you just said, we're doing it?
If you want to be mom, go be mom. Why delay it? It's never the right time. You think I was ready for these 2 kids? Like, just go get knocked up. Like, go try. It's going to take time. And she was right.
Hi, Tracy. I am so excited to have you with me here today. For many, many selfish reasons, I saw a lot of my story in your story as I was looking through your history. And I should say what I hope is my story, since you have accomplished so much more and done so many wonderful things while also building your family. And I've also read a lot about how incredibly vocal you have been about supporting mothers, parents, women in management and in leadership in general, and especially as entrepreneurs. I want to start by having you walk through maybe, we know that you started PlanGrid in 2011. So you built the business almost to the sale before becoming a mother. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that experience was like once you began that family building process as you were trying to negotiate funding / a sale to Autodesk, and then sort of walk through what that experience was like? Because I personally cannot fathom selling a business, going through a late stage fundraise while also becoming a parent for the first time.
Yeah. So I think I was in my early 30s. I'm running PlanGrid. It's the first company I founded. I was a construction engineer by trade, and every day I was in the biggest job I had ever done before. And I came up with all these excuses of why this is not the year where I'm going to get pregnant and become a mom, because there's just too much work to do. And I remember having this conversation with my friend Maria, and I was like, I think I'm going to go freeze my eggs. And Maria at the time was also a founder and CEO and a mom. And her advice to me was, look, if you want to be mom, go be mom. Why delay it? It's never the right time. You think I was ready for these 2 kids? Like, just go get knocked up. Like, go try. It's going to take time. And she was right, because it took me a year to get pregnant. And, it was like month over month when my period came, it was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get pregnant? What's wrong? Starting to blame my husband. What's wrong with you? Nothing was wrong with us. I think we were just way too stressed out for that to happen. But it eventually happened. And this must have been 2017. And PlanGrid's at the stage where at our board meetings, we were looking at, how is the company going to look like in the next 3 years? Are we going to take this company public? And around the same time, Autodesk called us and said they were interested in acquiring us. And so around this time, we're entertaining conversations with Autodesk. Fast forward a year, it would take a year for negotiations to get through. And the deal would fall through for various reasons several times. And we knew we needed to maximize all options for the company. And so after I had my son in 2018, we're still negotiating with Autodesk. The conversation's still continuing. We made a decision to also fundraise a Series C. So I remember Leo was like 6 weeks old, and I went down to Sand Hill Road, and
wow,
I was so scared, and I'm so petite. So it's really a baggy sweater, and like, it's really hard to see that I had just had a baby. But I was breastfeeding at the time, and I was so scared to tell these VCs I have this newborn at home and I need to pump milk between these meetings. So I would park in front of someone's super nice home in Palo Alto, and I would just use a silicone hand pump and pump milk, and then dump it off the side because I was so sleep deprived I'd forgotten to bring the refrigeration kit or the cooler. And we secured a Series C term sheet, and then a few months later, Autodesk, we came to a deal that we could sign with Autodesk.
Wow. And so you started to try to get pregnant. It's so interesting that, was there a moment when you found out you were pregnant where you thought this is bad timing? Or at that point, had you just said, we're doing it?
When it rains, it pours. The day I found out I was pregnant with Leo, and again, this has taken a year, I
Right.
was so happy. Best day of my life. Looking at that little, the pea stick test. And I go into work and I got an email from my VP of engineering who said, my laptop is in my desk. My keys are in my desk. I'm not coming back.
Ugh.
And I remember calling him immediately and just like, have you heard of like a 2 weeks notice? Like we had a one-on-one yesterday. Why? Why are you doing this? Am I that bad of a leader that you just have to bone out like this? And so you can imagine the emotions swinging to a very low moment in my career and having to clean that up and keep the team together in a time where I think a lot of us felt, especially the engineering team, felt like they were abandoned. I mean, their leader just left without any reason.
Yeah.
And lots of reasons, of course, but didn't have the courtesy to talk about it or have the courage to talk about it.
Yeah. So after you then sign with Autodesk, I imagine you stayed on for a certain period of time with Autodesk after that. Was it more, and now I'm projecting my own experience with motherhood, but I have found when I also have 3 children, when I've had my children in moments of really extreme stuff happening at work, I almost find that I like delay some of the sort of like dealing with the motherhood changes. Like I just can't imagine going through all of this and welcoming a child for the first time. Was there a moment after you sold where you felt like you could take a deep breath and focus a little bit more? Or is that not at all your experience? Is that me totally projecting what I felt?
There's just new problems that come up. I mean, the problems we experienced after we sold, which was a big moment for the company, and it was a meaningful outcome for many people who were involved and a financial outcome for everyone involved. There was this deep feeling of malaise in the company. And partially it was because we're now being jammed into a completely different culture.
Mm-hmm.
Partially there's a lot of unknowns about, okay, well, Autodesk just acquired 3 startups and jamming them into this other startup they had bought a few years ago. So with 4 marketing leaders, who's going to be the leader for this new construction crew? So there's just a lot of unknowns, and we just had a set of new problems I hadn't seen before. And the goal was obviously retention of the team, but 40% of our team would leave within 18 months. And that's how much turnover we saw after acquisition. Yeah. It's very depressing.
Yeah. And then you ended up going on to Y Combinator and eventually starting your current company, Tiger Eye. Can you walk through a little bit when you added in the second and third children in the mix there? And did you think about timing, or was this like, we're just doing it, this is what we want, and when they come, they come?
Yeah. So after the acquisition, Autodesk actually allowed me to have, because suddenly I pushed for integration. I was actually supposed to lead the PlanGrid's product line as CEO for a year, but it became very obvious within the first quarter that it just didn't make sense. We needed to integrate ASAP and integrate our teams so that customers wouldn't get calls from 4 separate salespeople from different product lines. And so within 6 months, I found myself really without a job. I mean, they very much wanted me to be this cultural leader, but I wasn't responsible for anything. I mean, it was like, I think my official title was VP of strategy. It's like a VP of strategy with no one reporting to me and me not really taking it. It's just like, I just talk to people. And so I tried to tell my general manager, like, this isn't a real job. Y Combinator is asking me to help out. Can I work over there part-time? He was like, yes, just like stay here, go work over there. So I had 2 jobs, and then I got pregnant with my second child, which is great. And I eventually left Autodesk and worked at Y Combinator, very pregnant. Then COVID hits, and so everything went into lockdown and remote. And then I had a COVID baby. I had the whole birthing with the mask, and my husband had a mask.
Same.
And we had limitations. Remember this? It's like there's this moment where my husband's like, "Are you sure you don't want the doula in the hospital with you?" And I was like, "No, man, you're going to be there with me. I'm not getting out of this."
I know that was, I mean, and we, even thinking back about giving birth wearing a mask, it's like, yeah, it was so scary because nobody knew if it was, how dangerous it was or was not for pregnant women, for the baby, et cetera, et cetera. Why then, I'm curious to hear more about how you ended up starting Tiger Eye. Why that? I also I have a particular passion around women in sales. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well, but maybe share a little bit about Tiger Eye and how you came up with the idea and what that looked like to transition. Like, were you just itching like crazy to become a founder again and you just could not wait? Or how did that come about in the midst of all of everything else that was happening in your life?
You nailed it. So I just have to work. It's part of my personality, of this very intensity that my family doesn't need 24/7, and driving everyone crazy. And I think startups reward the founders who are this intense and obsessive. And no one would ever question why a founder is arguing over pixels or arguing over words. Like, startups allow for that. So it's a place where I feel very comfortable being myself. And I just like working. And when I left Y Combinator to basically go into maternity leave and be with my second child, and also I guess Leo was home too, so being with both of them. I'm also married to my co-founder. We just ended up spending a lot of time dissecting every mistake we had made at PlanGrid. And what happens with that is you just start wondering if you could do it better next time. Have I actually learned anything? Especially going back to Y Combinator after my second was born and my husband was working for Y Combinator too. There's a couple things at play. One, we were very much itching to start another company, just out of curiosity. Did we learn anything? Can we build a better company? Did we get really lucky, or is luck correlated to hard work, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing at play was funding hundreds of companies, getting to meet thousands of founders who are incredibly bright and smart and ambitious. And over again, Ralph and I wondering where all the women were. You have to understand, at this time, millions of women had left the workforce because of COVID to take care of their children, to take care of their families. And many of them still have not returned back. Mm-hmm. And it was, maybe the feminists in us really felt strongly that we can talk about diversity issues all day long, but the one thing that we can change is ourselves and us starting a company with a female CEO and a female founder, just so we can be one more unit to the statistics in the positive direction.
Yeah. Which is interesting because Tiger Eye is sales enablement, right? And sales is also a space that I don't know what the stats are at like entry level sales, but as sales reps get more experienced, more senior, there is a very low % representation of women in sales, which is something that I've become very passionate about because I think a lot of that does come back to parental leave and how we don't pay sales reps their comp, which is oftentimes 50% of their salary or their take-home pay when they go out on parental leave. Have you learned more or gotten more into the weeds of women in sales, or are you more focused on like women in leadership, management, entrepreneurs? I'm curious if that like women in sales piece has come up a lot in your work.
Yes, it has, naturally, just because of the bad statistics, right? And it's so interesting because anyone can be good in sales, and it's a great career for those who are willing to do the hard work and willing to just every single day get better at what they do. And it pays well, and it gives a certain type of flexibility that a desk job doesn't give, right? Mm-hmm. I knew sales reps, men and women, who would, some of them would wait till like the last month of the quarter and then cram all their work in that last month and somehow make it to their number. I knew people who would front load all their work, get to their number by mid-quarter, and then would sort of take a break and a vacation, and then come back the last week. And, the flexibility for those who can get the work done in a small amount of time is incredible. I don't think any other job allows for this. And it pays well, especially as you move up into the management positions. But as you look at the leadership and even frontline, second line, third line management, there are very few women.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me because if I was a sales rep, I would want to report to a frontline manager who's a woman. I just feel like they would be able to be a more compassionate leader.
Yeah. There are also
And
some stats, and I almost hesitate to say these because I don't know them off the top of my head, but I've read that overall, female sales reps do outperform male sales reps. Like there have been actually studies on this, and yet there just aren't that many women in sales. What do you think the problem is? I mean, I know that that's like
it's representation. You just don't know what's available to you.
Yeah.
Or you have this very, traditionally you think about sales people, you think about Glenn Ross, and that is a culture that no talented woman would ever want to work for. And I believe that is still true, but it's sort of this dying culture today.
Yeah.
Gen Z is coming into the workforce, millennials are in the workforce, and I just don't think these generations are going to stand for anything less than a good culture.
Yeah.
Because we need it to be diverse. We need it to have more perspective. We need it to be smarter. So I care about getting more women into sales because I think these are great jobs where they can not only contribute to our economy, pay taxes, but it's such a good job that they might be able to also take care of their family in a way other positions might not be able to. I feel deeply passionate about seeing more women in leadership, mostly because of our world events today. What if half of our leaders were women? Would it be for a better world? I'm going to bet it would be. And I would like to see that in my lifetime. And then more than anything, I want to see a strong economy in the US. And the only way to see a strong economy is if 50% of the population is contributing to taxes. Because when we have a strong economy, it means people are doing well. Their livelihoods are doing well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I oftentimes get asked, like, what is the biggest thing that would help more women, especially, continue to thrive in the workplace? I personally think it comes down to childcare. If I could figure out an answer to that, I would probably be a billionaire. I think it's a really complicated problem that probably has to be dealt with at a political level, unfortunately.
But I would love to see universal quality childcare, and like, let's invest in the parents, let's invest in the next generation, because you can't, if you don't have childcare figured out, you can't work. And most of the childcare duties ends up falling upon mom, which means we are taking women out of the workforce.
Yeah. I think it is like the number one thing that if we could figure that out, and it's not going to be a startup that comes up with something that solves this problem, I think it has to be, universal childcare or something, why does everyone celebrate when their child gets to the age of kindergarten and it's free? And like, we shouldn't have to wait 5 to 6 years to feel like finally we can, focus on ourselves and not spend so much of our income on childcare. I want to shift a little bit and switch the subject a little bit. You fundraised for Tiger Eye while pregnant. I think actually quite pregnant, later in your pregnancy. I read a piece that you wrote about how you, I think, got the term sheet and then told them that you were pregnant. You also told your board when you were around 20 weeks pregnant. I also fundraised and told my board for parental leave when I was pregnant. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on the sequence of events, how you decided when to disclose, what that felt like. Because this is actually like one of the biggest questions we get, not from obviously entrepreneurs, but from, I would say, pretty much every woman who is pregnant working. They struggle with, when do I disclose that I'm expecting a child?
Yeah. I was very fortunate. I was an employee of YC for a year, and they asked me to stay as a partner. And it's just like, I think I don't think VC is for me. I think I want to found another company. And Ralph, same thing with Ralph at the time. And Michael Seibel came back and said, well, can I learn more about what you guys are building? And then we told him in like a 20-minute phone call. He was like, okay, well, can YC invest? And And I remember thinking, has he forgotten that we're pregnant? Like, I'm 8 months pregnant right now. He hasn't forgotten. Of course not. It's just that I was so self-conscious about, I think this is true for all mothers. We're
Yeah.
so self-conscious, and so many of our meetings are remote and through Zoom that you're like, maybe they just like have forgotten, and they, it's because they can't see my big belly through the screen.
Yeah.
But no, they knew, and they were totally fine with that. They're like, we have kids too. Like, you'll just go back
Yeah.
to work. You're out of mat leave. And I was
Yeah.
very, very grateful for the partnership there, for trusting us.
I think it's really interesting because like our business is about going on parental leave. And so one would hope and expect that our investors would very much embrace this. But I also struggled with a lot of infertility throughout my childbearing years, and we really wanted a third kid. We thought it would take us forever to get pregnant. So we got pregnant the first month. I mean, we were just absolutely shocked. We had used fertility for the first two. So it was like, what is going on here? And that was right as I was starting to raise my seed round. And so it was also really early. So I almost felt like, okay, good. I don't have to tell them because, based on societal expectations, you don't have to tell in the early days. And then I think I signed the term sheet when I was 12 weeks pregnant. And then I told them, and of course they were fine, happy. And I also suspected, is there a part of this that's like, well, it's my third kid. So like, I got it. Like, I know what is coming. I mean, that's maybe my own interpretation of this, of just like, at that point, I felt like I just had all this chaos at home anyway. So what's another one to throw in the mix? Like I'm already dealing with it. But it was something that even though my company deals with parental leave, I was still nervous. And so I'm like, are there people out there that aren't nervous, when they're disclosing this fact to folks? But I also think it sets a really good example to be able to see someone like that go through. And that's why I love your story. You went through so many major career milestones while navigating something that, let's be honest, is like very physically challenging and emotionally challenging as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so funny because I'm trying to channel my male founder friends, and we're also dads now. And I'm not sure if any of these topics like hit their mind. And it's different, right? Because of course it is very hard to welcome a newborn into the home and like take care of your partner and like take care of yourself and be sleep deprived for the first 6 months of the child's life. But it's very different growing the baby in your body and then going through birth or a C-section and having to heal after that.
Mm-hmm.
But we are women and we are strong and we've been doing it for several generations, and we've survived as a species because of it.
How did you handle your parental leave, your third one? Because you were, in an early stage business. Your husband, how many weeks did you take? Did you take a parental leave? Like, how did you structure that?
Just the two of us at that point. I think we had like 1 or 2 contractors. So the startup basically stopped. Yeah. Everything stopped. And it was early enough where it didn't matter. We didn't have customers yet. We didn't beta customers yet. But yeah, it did stop. And, but as soon as I was healed and as soon as baby was old enough for his grandparents, her grandparents to help out and nannies to help out, we were in full swing back at work.
Yeah. That's so
remotely helps. Like I don't waste my time sitting in traffic going to an office.
Mm-hmm.
And we have flexible work hours at Tiger Eye. So we have 6 shared core hours. And then the last 2-3 hours, you work when it's your most energetic hours in your day. Your life better than I do. Some people like to work at midnight till 3 a.m. Mm-hmm. That's when they're the most awake apparently. And I like working at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I think the other thing that I found is I didn't really want to tell all of our clients that I was pregnant necessarily because I was actually really embarrassed. My leave with my third. So when I had my second, it was basically just me and a team of career coaches. And so that was hard, but I kind of did the same thing you're describing of like, we just didn't do much. Like we just kind of kept on going with our current clients and that was fine. But when I had my third, we were bigger and, I had a team and whatnot. And I wanted to come back after 6 weeks very, very slowly, like work a few hours a week on really like important client calls. And I almost didn't want the clients to know, because I didn't want to, like, here I am running this parental leave company. I'm screaming from the rafters that everyone should have 4 months of leave. And now 6 weeks postpartum, I'm like hopping on a call, but it's like a few hours a week. And it was really nice that it was virtual, so that I just had to put on a nice top and some lipstick, and that was it. And like, I got to do that and I loved it. I mean, being able to work from home gave me that agency to say, okay, I'm going to work 5 hours this week. And that was it, And I think that really helps, especially when you're in the early days and you're the founder or CEO, that you can't just unplug for 4 months oftentimes.
I do think we can be more creative than I'm going to take 3 straight months of maternity, paternity leave, 4 straight months of maternity, paternity leave. Just a couple examples that come to mind. Apartment List has a ramp back in for moms and dads where the first week they come back for only 1 day. The second week they come back for 2 days. The third week, 3 days, up until a 5-day work week again. And for the first few weeks, you're not expected to take on your full load. There are natural things you want to do. You want to connect with your team again. You want to get updates on all the projects. You want to tell your teammates about your new family member and the baby and how you're doing. And there's just a natural conversation that happens that doesn't need to involve actual work. And I really very much like that. Another one that comes to mind, one of our engineering managers who had his daughter around the same time I had my first son. And mind you, we're without an engineering leader, so he was crucial. I was interim VPE, and our other engineering manager was also on mat leave. But anyways, he decided to not take his paternity leave right away. His wife went on maternity leave to watch their daughter. And then she ramped back into work, and then he started his paternity leave so that the baby would have 6 months full time with one of the parents.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. And I think that for me, having that flexibility, I didn't really come back full time for 4 months, but I was doing the most important things starting relatively early. And I loved having that freedom to be able to decide what mattered. But of course, I'm basically my own boss, so I can make that. I think it's very complicated if you feel like you have to work versus you want to work. Yeah.
Oh, an example, which I think is important. This one's cool too. They would distribute their paternity leave over Fridays. So for many months, it was just like, I'm not going to be here on Friday. I'm going to be with my child. I'm going to be helping out at home, and I'm going to get work done. It's going to be these 4 days. I'm not going to take a chunk of time. I'm just going to spread it out during the year so I can be there year one for my baby and my partner.
What is it like starting a company working so closely with your husband?
It is nonstop projects. It is nonstop just communication about the kids. We're raising kids together, so we're learning on the job, just like all parents. And then we end up talking about work a lot, as you can imagine. I very much like it. I think we have experience now. It is very hard when founders come to me and they come to me with some statement like, I'm thinking about starting a company with my partner. What advice do you have for me? And my advice to them is, don't do it.
Yeah, that terrifies me.
Because, as you know, relationships are really hard. Marriage is hard, and it takes constant work forever. So why complicate it with something like a startup that's also incredibly hard? But with that said, we are also an example that it can work. We have a great relationship. It takes work. It's hard. And I think we are really good founders together, mostly because whatever our skill sets are, there's very little overlap, which means between the two of us, we can take care of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are about at time. I wanted to touch a little bit on sort of when you think about what your best case scenario is for Tiger Eye, and this doesn't need to be just, the ultimate exit or monetization, but you've been really successful. You obviously had this itch to go back and do it again. What does success mean to you now, this time around?
I want to build a product that people like to use for their jobs. I want to hear them say, just as they did in PlanGrid, I don't know what I was doing before this product. And then I want to build a culture that people like working for. And I think another lens of success is 10 years from now, if so many of our teammates at this company end up starting their own company, we would find it incredibly meaningful and rewarding.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I find you incredibly impressive. I think we don't see enough stories from women or even parents that have been so successful in a B2B world, especially. And so I really appreciate you sharing this and sharing some details around sort of your family building years in tandem with building your career. So thank you so much.
And thank you for what you do too. I think it's incredibly important.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The False Tradeoff. Make sure to subscribe if you like what you heard, and give us a follow on LinkedIn to continue the conversation on all things working parenthood and parental leave. Is there a topic you'd love us to cover in a future episode? Drop us an email at hello@parentally.com. And if you're looking for support on preparing for parental leave, head over to www.parentally.com. We have checklists, guides, and other free resources to help you make the experience a little bit easier. That's parentally.com.